Hi, I'm Quincas and I'm a synth DIY guy. Welcome to today's video, which is the fourth and final installment on our series of videos about the Rebel Technology Euclidean Series. And today we're going to talk about Logoi. Logoi is a voltage-controlled clock divider, counter, and delay. So that's basically what it does, but let's have a read what it says on the manual here because it's a little bit technical for me. The functions of Logoi are split with division on the left and addition on the right. The right side operates either as counter mode by adding clocks or swing mode by adding a time delay. The mode is set by the center switch. The module has CV inputs and trigger outputs for each side, and a combined trigger output which gives the output of both operations, divide and add. The trigger input is shared between division and addition. There is also a reset input and manual reset switch. There are three LEDs indicating the divided and added output to the left and right, and the combined output in the center. I'm going to come over here to my test area. By the way, check out my new cabinet I had made at the carpenter down the street. It turned out wonderful. Now I have all of the stuff that was kind of stored is now on display and ready to be used. And I did shoot some of the process. I'll upload that later. Anyway, let's get on with Logoi. I've already made a patch here. So basically it's 3-voice patch, right? So I'm gonna turn on the clock here and I'm gonna show you each voice. So first we have this sort of a metronome. This is just the straight up clock triggering a very teeny little filter 8 note there, which is being modulated by the orbit 3 just to have some variation. But this is just to give us the clock pulse. Right, now I'm going to turn up this channel over here, which is sort of more like a tom or a kick kind of a sound, and this is the first channel of Logoi. So I'm sending the clock right to the input right here, and both these inputs are tied. It's the same, so it's just really this is just a way to take the clock out to use it somewhere else. And the output of this first channel of the Logoi is triggering this contour 1 over here envelope generator in its gate input, which means that it'll have a sustained stage. So the first thing that you'll notice as you increase the division value of the Logoi, it also extends the pulse width. So now we're getting a longer note, right? So if you don't want that, there's an easy way. You can just use the Fourier over here, and this lets you set the length of the pulse, right? And now we can hear how that pulse width stays the same now as I use different divisions. Let's make the clock like super fast just so we can really hear those divisions. So this is like every note, then you get half there, then it goes to 3 and so on. So you can get up to divided by 16, which is a lot, right? Very cool. So this is voice number 2, right? Let's turn that down for now. And voice number 3 here, that's the repeat side, right side here, and it's set to repeat now. So I can set after how many clocks it'll repeat, it'll trigger, right? So let's turn both of them on now. So now we're listening to both sides and the clock, both sides of Logoi. So you can get some interesting polyrhythms using both the division and addition sides together with different voices. Right. Let's make the clock a little slower, a little more realistic. Right. And here we go. There you go, 3 against 4. Now if I put the switch in the middle position here, then what we get on the right side is a delay. Now this is the delayed clock. See? As I turn the knob, it starts creating this little offset, which can be really cool because it's modulatable. Both of these features have CV inputs with attenuators, right? So that's really cool when you start modulating them. So let's listen to both. There we go. Let's turn the clock a little faster. And now we're going to use the chaos generator here, orbit 3, to modulate both parameters, the divide and the delay. Listen to how wonky that is. Now, let's go back to using, because now that this is varying, it's going to be interesting to hear. We'll go back to using the actual output from the Logoi instead of reducing that pulse width. There we go. So taking advantage of that gate length variation that's being generated by the divide function. So the gate is always high for 50% of the time. So when you're dividing it by a lot and you have very sporadic gates, those gates would be nice and long, which is interesting in certain contexts. Cool, huh? And the combined output combines both functions. So now I'm using that on voice 2, right, which is this voice right here. So we're listening to the pattern being generated by the combined output of both sides of Logoi, and with both functions being voltage controlled, receiving modulation signal from orbit 3 chaos oscillator. Cool. Let's turn the metronome back on. Alright, now let's change the function of the right side. Let's make it that addition rather than delay. That's right, so that's the combined output, but let's go back to having the separate left side output. So cool, so this is yet another interesting way, and this is not Euclidean. This is just based on delays, divisions, and addition. Cool. Now what happens if we go to audio rate here? Yeah, cool. Cool. Maybe take an output straight to audio. Let's turn these voices down and take the combined output here and go straight to audio with that. There you go. As usual, these do not disappoint when you take them up to audio rate noise madness. Cool. How about if we take both outputs in stereo? Let's see what that sounds like. Haha, cool. Ain't that something? And again, we might as well use the sequencer here to create some variation. There we go. Whoa, nice. Super cool. Always fun to discover these things. This is the Logoi module, again by Rebel Technology, in their new partnership with Befaco. What else do we get in this kit? Here's bag A, will have most of the electronic components. Bag B are the hardware panel components, and we get a couple of knobs. And we get a couple of pots, some knurlies for mounting, and probably in here, yep. We get the knurly tool and a power cable. Okay, now we'll start by organizing our work area. Very good. The first thing that we're gonna concern ourselves with will be the resistors. Bypass capacitors, the resonator for the chip, for the microcontroller. Let's get these resistors out of their cardboard. We'll do the same with the electrolytic capacitors. Get them out of their packaging. I'm gonna measure these. Make sure they're 1K resistors. Yep, 0.995. So I'm just gonna gently bend the leads like that. So we want R2, R3, and R4 are the first designators. So 6 of these, this should be 51K. Let's measure it, make sure. Yep, 51.5 says my multimeter. Let's move on to the 5Ks, 51Ks. So the next, we have 420Ks in the bottom. 119.96, which is 120. If you round it up by just a tiny little bit. So these are 101, 105. Okay, so there are 2 kinds of resistors for which we have 3 each. We have to measure 100 ohms. So 5, 6, and 7 O3s. Okay, this is 10 kilos, 10 kilo ohms. R1, 303, and 403. Okay, now we have only 2 values left, both of which we have 2 of each. So we have to measure to know for sure. 1 meg. So this is 1 meg, right? This is 302 and 402. All right, and then we only have 2 resistors left and 2 spots left. And this reads 100K exactly. And we're done placing the resistors. Now we're gonna solder them from the top side. Before you turn the board around, just rub your fingers and feel for anything wobbly or loose, and then you know that you've missed a spot with the soldering. Right, so everything is trimmed out. Let's clean up a little bit. The diodes go in at the same time as the resistors because they're also low profile radio components. However, these are polarized, so you gotta make sure they go in the right way. There's a line on the PCB that should match the line on the diode itself. I'm not even gonna look at designators because these are the only two diodes in this entire build, and they're power diodes. I think this is, I'm pretty sure this is inverse power protection. So they're here to make sure you don't damage anything if you happen to plug the power cable backwards. But I can't vouch for that, so don't plug anything in backwards. Make sure that negative 12 volts is where it should be. Okay, so these are the diodes. So it's easy enough, fast enough. Now the next lowest profile components are usually the IC sockets. There's a notch, right? On this PCB the notch is not visible. It's cut off up here, but you know it's up there because down here is a straight line, there's no notch. So make sure you face the notch upward on the big IC socket right here. Now this one does have a visible notch, so just line it up with that. Now turn this around. We'll solder up. Okay, so that's the socket. Let's look at the manual here. What's the next thing it says to do? Capacitors, resonator, transistor, and regulators. So all the stuff that's in this little tray over here. See, there's a difference between the transistors and the regulator. In this case, which is the regulator has the straight little legs and the transistors have them spread out, right? Just make sure you don't get this one confused with the transistors, right? Because this is actually an IC. So when you see an IC designator with a transistor shaped silkscreen, you know that's going to be the regulator right there. Make sure to match the drawing to the flat side of the component with the flat side of the drawing on the PCB. Let's continue with the transistors. Always making sure they line up to the drawing. Here's the resonator for the chip. Usually seen crystals used for this rather than a resonator with 3 pins. It's kind of a first. Sure, it works just fine though. So okay, here's the electrolytic capacitors. Remember, these are polarized, so line up the white stripe on the capacitor with the white line on the PCB silkscreen. See, all these capacitors are 104s, so they're 100 nanofarad capacitors. And that's it. That's all of the electronic components. Let's solder them up. Looks like we are done with all of these electronic components. Place on the ICs, because once we put the panel on, we don't want to have to take it back out just because you forgot to put the ICs in, right? And we'll start with the power connector, which is the single component that goes on the back side of this PCB. And here we go. Now let's start with the panel stuff. And we know from the other two builds that I did today that each of these pots is going to require a nut be placed on it before the panel, because they are really short little pots. They're shorter than the jacks. Now the switch is usually sits really wobbly. See, so we'll leave it for last because otherwise it's gonna aggravate me by falling all the time. So we'll start with the jacks. Okay, we also know that the square pad on the LED is negative, right? It says so on the manual. And we know that the long leg of the LED is positive. So long leg goes into round hole. And same here. Long leg into the round hole. Now just the pots and the switch. So first the pots. Groovy. Uh-oh. There's a third LED. There it is. So positive in the round hole. Long leg, round hole. And that's for this one, huh? Don't assume that every kit you get is gonna follow that standard, because, you know, like they say, the good thing about standards is there's so many to choose from. Am I overusing that joke? I might have said it in another one of these videos. Okay. So now we'll take one of the nuts for the switch. Blacks for inputs and reds for outputs. So I'm not 100% positive on this one, but I'm looking at arrows that go outward on these two. I'm gonna assume these two are the outputs. When I get a good look at the manual for this module, oh, I think we're missing a red because there are only 4 blacks here. Let's just leave that one for when I find the missing red banana nut. Almost done now. The LEDs, the way I've been liking to do these is like not all the way outy and not all the way inny, but like halfway. So let's do the same to this one. We'll push it up slightly, like about there, and then spread out the legs to lock the position. And the same with the third one. Now we'll just hold this with one of these alligator clips, and I'm going to go ahead and solder up all of the pots, all of the jacks, and the switch and the LEDs, and we'll be done as soon as we put on the knobs. These were super easy and straightforward to build. So fun. So that's good for today, and that's good for the series. Hope you enjoyed all 4 videos. If you haven't seen the other ones, check them out. And it's a very fun exploration of what they can do and beyond. And that's it for now. See you soon, and stay noisy.